are starting off. Here we go. It is Friday. Today is February. What is it? The 26th? What is time
26?
anymore?
26.
And here we are again with Elise Rodriguez. And for the first time, and I'm enjoying getting to meet for the first time as well, Kelly, how do you pronounce your last name? Is it Agathos?
It's Agathos.
Agathos. There were so many different syllables I could have emphasized.
Any of them, yeah.
Agathos. So welcome. I'm going to let each of you introduce yourselves because you can do that better than I can about where you're from and what theaters you play in. So Elise, you did this last time. Why don't you start off?
My name is Elise Rodriguez, and I am an improviser based out of Florida in the United States. And before the pandemic, I was improvising with Florida Studio Theater in Sarasota.
Awesome. And Will's still there?
Will is still there, yes. I mean, we're not doing much live. I think there's some stuff going on the internet, but I haven't been doing too much of
There
Zoom
was
Pro.
there was like a real short time you were doing socially distanced improv live.
I was not participating in it because Florida was not doing well at all with COVID, but that quickly ceased.
Got it.
To go down.
Yeah. It was a valiant attempt to survive in another way. Great. Yeah. And Kelly, you are in Europe.
I am. I'm in Brussels, the capital of Europe. And I'm actually Greek American by origin, but I've lived in Brussels for over half my life. I used to work as a speechwriter in the European Commission, but I've been doing improv for 10 years. So at some point, I decided to ditch European affairs and follow my dream and my passion, which is improvised theater. So I founded Impro-Bubble because the people who work for the EU in Brussels are called part of the Euro-Bubble. So since I was bringing improv to the international crowd in English, because the two national languages are Dutch and French in Belgium, I called it the Impro-Bubble because I knew that most of my international focus would be on people who were either living and working in the vicinity of the EU or directly for the EU. So Improbubble is now 4 years old. We have something like 77 students. We do corporate training, we do professional shows, we do student shows, we do a lot of experimental shows where we jumble a bunch of people together and see what happens. Currently, Belgium is on lockdown, so we are we're like everybody, we're watching and waiting.
So how did you get started in improv there in Brussels?
Well, I was finishing my master's in UCL in the UK, and because I always loved theater, I've been doing theater since I was 12, I was in the university sketch group. And we went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is one of the biggest theater festivals in the world. And I was watching a lot of shows, and that's where I first saw an improv show. And I just couldn't believe that you could have a show where you make things up on the spot. I was fascinated. I'd never seen it before. So I ended up spending the rest of the festival. When I was not on stage at the festival, I was checking out anything that was improvised. So I saw improvised film noirs, I saw improvised musicals, I saw one-man shows, like group shows, DVD shows. I saw everything I could get my hands on that was improvised. And then I moved to Brussels. I moved back home to Brussels because I had left for university. So I moved back to Brussels on an internship in the European Commission to try and figure out what this EU thing was. But I was determined not to be a boring suit person. So I kept up my theater. And it just so happened that the American Theater Company of Brussels that I was a part of at the time was running an improv workshop with a lovely individual you might know called Ryan Miller, who's now based in Amsterdam. And that was my first improv teacher. That was my first workshop. I didn't think I could do it because it looked so scary when I watched it. But it was scary and exhilarating and wonderful. And basically, after that, I just kept on doing improvised theater, and I didn't stop. And it's the one thing in life that the more I do of it, the more I want to do of it. So I've had other things like hobbies and passions, which I've just thrown away. But this is the one thing consistently in life that I've loved more and I haven't got tired of. So that's how I knew that I had to make it my job.
That's awesome. That's why I always say that for me, I came from a film background versus a theater background, and I was going to write and direct films. And then I loved films that had improvisation involved in them, like Christopher Guest and Mike Leigh. Like Life is Sweet is a drama, but they improvised a lot of the dialogue. And so then when I started doing it, I had massive stage fright. And I always say that it was the hardest thing I ever did. And that's why I became totally and completely addicted to it. So,
you were like, oh, no, we can't have this fear.
No.
We can't have no fear.
No. Which is hilarious to me. Great. Now that I'm older, I'm like, why have I always gone the hardest? Like, I'm always attracted to the hardest thing to do. Why
don't
we take life a little bit easier sometimes?
I don't know. I really don't know. And at least
I feel like improv turns out to be the easier thing. Like once you know and understand it, it's like, oh, I don't have to prepare anything. I just gotta show up.
That's because you're a lawyer that you think that way.
Retired lawyer, right?
That's a perfect segue.
Yeah.
For the record, I'm retired, Your Honor.
But, when I talked to you and my brother about the Second City purchase, and for those of you who watched, my brother helped us sort of understand private equity investments. You both had the same exact reaction, was like, how many days do I have to prepare? And I was like, I'm sorry, not much. You have a couple of hours to prepare. You're like, okay, I'm on it. But you both were very 100%. Preparation focused. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is,
and at least I got some transferable skills from it, but that's as far as that goes.
When we met in Miami, you told me a little bit, like, how did you get from law into improv?
Misery. That's what that was. I was completely miserable as an attorney. And then I was just getting so down on myself for being in a profession that I knew I didn't like. And then I was like, I know what I need to do. I need to go see the Cuban coffee psychic, obviously.
Oh, amazing.
And then when I went to the Cuban coffee lady, she read my coffee. I had my coffee. She read my coffee. And she was like, oh, you need to go take an acting class because you are miserable in your job. And that's going to be the thing that makes you leave this job and moves you into what you're supposed to be doing. So within a couple of weeks, I was in my first improv class, and my first night of Improv 101, I came home and I was like, I quit law. Mind you, I had a law firm, so that was a little bit of a problem.
You had your own law firm?
Yeah. And then, so when I came home that night, I was like, all right, it's time to start winding it down. Within a week, I was telling everybody at my firm, I was like, this is going to start closing. We're going to stop this because I need to figure out what I'm going to do in my life, because I cannot waste another second pretending that I'm going to do this for an extended period of time. So it took some time to wind down my firm, obviously, but if it wasn't for the fact that I moved to Sarasota right when I did that, and it just so happens that Sarasota is an artistic town, Will Luera is there, our improv division at that is it's an equity theater with an improv division, so we had a lot of just work, like gigs and stuff like that. So I was able to just go right into improv. I was teaching and still trying to figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up, but I'm pretty sure I'm getting close.
That's an awesome story. And are improvisers paid equity scale in Sarasota?
No.
Okay.
No, that the improv department is not part of the equity part of the theater.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is a nice segue into why, right? Like improv is so young, and Kristen Sheard's just shouting out some love for Will Luera. Who doesn't love Will Luera? Right? It's just really
I haven't
hard.
met one person.
I've tried not to, just because he seems like he has enough, but you can't help it.
He looks like LinManuel Miranda. I think that gives him extra bonus points. Like, even if you didn't know him, he looks like Lin-Manuel Miranda, and everybody likes Lin-Manuel Miranda, so.
Right?
He dressed up as Hamilton one year for Halloween, and it was really uncanny.
I saw that, yeah. I saw that.
Amazing. But, so I think a big thing that's been coming out of this whole Second City purchase and also the pandemic, right? So I've been thinking a lot about what are things going to look like on the other end. We've lost a lot of theaters. I feel like the first round we lost was people who were burnt out already and just barely hanging on. And then when the pandemic happened, there was a wave of closures of people just like, it's been hard enough and I can't. So we had this rush of theaters close right off the bat or transfer into nonprofit, right? Transfer ownership. And then we had George Floyd's murder. We had a big movement of call for racial justice. And I think it happened to all the communities, right? And the improv community was no exception. So then we had a wave of theaters close who either hadn't tended to that, weren't willing to tend to that, had a bad track record that they maybe would never be able to overcome. So we had that wave. And now I feel like we're in this like wave of people who want to do it right, who want to create space and now it's just a matter of like, is there the right amount of relief funds? Are there resources to help us survive? What is Brussels? How, the United States is famous for not supporting the arts at all. We were fortunate.
We're not that different.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. No, it's improv falls through the cracks. I found out because things got so bad in Brussels with regard to the arts that in January and February, when we have these things called the emergency councils, and it's when the prime minister and the ministers meet in order to discuss the latest health measures, whether they're going to keep restrictions or loosen them up. And I noticed that in January and February, there was no mention. They mentioned hairdressers, they mentioned bar managers, they mentioned restaurants, nothing about culture. And this went on. I mean, today we had our the latest meeting was today, and they decided that we're not going to take any decisions for a week. We're just going to see how things go. So great. What we've been waiting for 2 weeks. Yeah.
Booze and vanity. These are the things we hold dear.
Exactly. And basically, so the improv community panicked, and the Francophone, because the Francophone section is the biggest section of Brussels, so they banded together and they got as many professional troops as possible to meet up. And because I speak French, they invited me along because I sometimes guest in French shows. I have a bilingual troupe on the side. And that is where we discovered that improv does not exist in the royal decree as the arts as an art form. It is not recognized by the government. So storytelling for children is recognized, and theater and dance and everything else is, but satire, humor, and improv are not. And now they are we're putting in place an association so that we can have a body that can be represented, that can go to what they call consultation committees in order for policymakers that make policy around the arts also take improvisers' voice into account. But I was shocked by the fact that improv did not exist as an art form in legislation to be recognized. And then personally, I mean, there was relief. There were some relief packages. They were not enough. They were nowhere near the amount that would be needed for someone who has a mortgage and a life and rent of a theater venue like I do. So the relief of the government covered half of my expenses, not my whole expenses. And I needed to do a fundraiser in the summer to keep my theater afloat because I have a brick and mortar theater in Brussels. And then they did a one-time relief of €3,000. But in order to be eligible for it, you had to prove making a loss. And because I only became a freelancer in the middle of 2019, they couldn't compare my income from 2019 to 2020. So there were all sorts of ways in which you fall through the cracks. Mm-hmm. And this, so it's not been great. And the cultural sector has been ignored for way too long. And we're at so on the 1st of March, the contact professions, as they're called, so massages, estheticians, beauticians are opening, and theaters are more a risk with all the measures in place than it is to be for a contact profession, according to the Belgians.
Wow.
So because improv and satire and humor is not a recognized art form, does that mean that I assume it means that if there ever is a relief package in the arts, then you wouldn't get any of that?
Well, that's the thing. It makes it super hard to apply for that, to get that relief, because we fall through the cracks. But even just opening, I mean, let's forget about the relief. Let's just talk about opening. I cannot believe, I'm finding it hard to understand how being in a theater at 40% capacity with a mask, with 2 meters distance from each chair, is more harmful than getting your eyebrows plucked. I just don't understand. The priorities of the government are not with culture. That's what's clear.
Yeah, Joe Bill is here. I'm going to add him to join us. Hi, Joe.
Hey.
Hi.
Nice
You're
to
all
have
meeting.
you. We are. Joe is
It's
the
your
reason.
favorite thing.
I know. It is my favorite thing.
I only know
I love
Kelly
that
and
we
Elise
have like the
because of
cool
Joe.
side of the screen, and then we have the warm side of the screen.
That's
Oh,
right.
yeah, look at us.
That's
yeah.
right. It is. Welcome, Joe. We're just talking about navigating COVID and relief funds, and it's very similar to the U.S. Kelly, listening to you tell that story, I know there are theaters that have, say, a coffee shop to help supplement their income, and that has made them not count as a theater because they have too much income from the coffee shop. Like, so there's a lot of ways that these relief funds have excluded people that I understand they're trying to prevent fraud, right? So somebody who, say, has an all-volunteer organization that's operating in a donated space that, doesn't really charge for tickets, like they don't want them to walk away with a big chunk of money. But there's so many ways to try to keep a venue supported. And this is a understanding that I feel a lot of improvisers and stand-ups and sketch artists and theater people in general forget, which is that you're paying for your staff and you're paying for your space 24/7.
Yeah.
But you're only open at night. And in a city like Portland, we actually only have 2 shows that on a regular basis. Like if we have someone from Kids in the Hall doing his Buddy Cole, Scott Thompson does Buddy Cole's a solo show on a Wednesday night, we can sell that out, obviously. But in terms of sustaining a show week after week after week, in Portland, it's Friday and Saturday, 7:30. Even our 9:30 shows, which is way different than Miami. Like in Portland, everyone's sleepy by 9:30, and in Miami, it's like 11
in Miami,
o'clock.
it's the thing you do before you go out.
Yeah. At 11 though, right? Like 9:30 and 11 are the more popular time
at
slots.
the theater in Miami, like when I haven't been performing at Just the Funny for years now, but they had shows going from Thursday to Sunday when I was here, and multiple shows on multiple stages. Now, were they always full? Certainly not. But there was always people there. And then they at the end, right before I was leaving, they got a license to sell beer and wine. So then people, because Miami, people would go there pre-game, right? I'm going to have a beer. I'm going to have a couple wines. I'm going to watch some comedy, and then I'm going to go out and drink some more. So that kind of changed it, but it was definitely helpful to have a bar, like you were just saying.
But even Thursday through Sunday is a real small percentage of the
week,
day,
right?
Yeah, of the
in
hours
the evenings.
in the
Well,
week.
and then they had classes, of course, the rest of the days. That's really what was making, I feel like, the most consistent money from where I was sitting. Not that I knew where the money was. We should have more transparency in improv.
Yes. That's my theme. Joe knows that. As a nonprofit, we have to have a certain amount of transparency anyway. This is something everyone should know. If you're participating in a nonprofit organization of any kind, but especially improv, since that's what we're talking about, you can go online and you can get a copy of that organization's 990. And the 990 is the form that we file our taxes, and we have to break down where our income is coming from. So that pretty much the broad strokes for sure are public knowledge anyway. And the only thing that we don't share is individuals' salaries, just to respect individuals' privacy. But we also share that nobody is making more than $25 an hour, and that's our teacher rate, and our teachers make more than any of our admins. So so that people can really understand that we're not walking home to our mansions and hopping in our yachts on the backs of improvisers. I think
you're not. What are you doing with your life? Seriously,
she's over here like,
I haven't given up yet. It'll happen.
I'll see you in Cannes after the film festival. We'll go on P. Diddy's yacht.
Exactly. But it's an interesting time because the pandemic has, I think, the pandemic and the racism that has surged in the United States over the past 4 years, culminating in the riots this summer. So racial inequity, unrealistic expectations, I think, of performers who don't understand the business side and don't want to understand the business side. And I'm not saying that those unrealistic expectations are about race. Those are separate. There's expectations about money and understanding about money in improv. The racial and gender inequities that have existed. Now the pandemic, it is ripe for plucking and going through and just buying up everybody who's trying to please their artists, trying to find a way to pay, trying to find a way to invest in DEI improvements in our organizations. At the same time, we have no income on this other side, and people are falling through the cracks of these relief funds. For us, we have a program that passed. It was the Shuttered Venue Act. It was led by an independent music venue organization, and it was specifically for music venues. But then they were like, where are your nonprofits? So it expanded, and some of us will qualify for that, but you have to have a staff, you have to pay a house manager and a tech. So you have to have at least 2 full-time people, which I think rules out 90% of improv theaters in this country to actually have support and tech staff on payroll. So, and that money, it passed in the fall, but the applications haven't even opened. So as far as 2021 has existed, and you're supposed to spend it by June 30th. So here we are headed into March, and the funds aren't available, but we're supposed to have spent them by the end of June. And so last year I didn't spend any money until I had it. Right? I just wasn't going to gamble that the money wouldn't be gone before we got it. And I've been describing the year as like a cash grab booth. You know those booths? Do they have these in Brussels, like in game shows, where you're in a booth and the money blows and you got to like grab the money?
Yeah, I know what you mean. We don't have it, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
And so I was afraid, right? Because the money would be gone 2 days before the deadline to apply for some relief funds that were out there. So I didn't want to spend any money, but this year I'm taking a gamble, and I'm continuing to pay staff from our limited savings, hoping that it'll get replenished if we qualify for the shuttered venue money, if it ever actually opens and becomes available. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see at the end of this, who remains standing and who remains independently standing. What are your guesses? Elise, you wanted to talk about this a bit. What?
I have guesses, but I'm gonna need to
Go
2 minutes.
Yeah, go deal with your dog.
I've been thinking about that a lot lately. I think I described it to a friend of mine lately as this is really survival of the fittest. This is like Darwinism, really, for us, because the people who can afford to will survive, and the people who cannot afford to will not. I know improvisers, and I'm not talking now specifically about Brussels. I'm talking about Europe in general, because I have we go to a lot of festivals. We meet each other. It's kind of like, imagine Europe as the United States, and we all travel to each other's states. We talk a lot. We've been talking a lot with our fellow improvisers in other European countries, and some have taken full-time jobs because they just didn't know how to make ends meet. Others have decided to ramp up the impro and try and get the online thing going. With mixed, some people have managed to figure out the magic formula that makes online work. Some have not. So what I'm seeing is like a race. I'm seeing survival of the fittest really play out. And at the end of the day, I think the people who are going to still be standing are the people with the lowest overheads and the people with the reserves, either because they're independently wealthy or because they managed to find a way to monetize things during the pandemic in order to stay standing. For myself, I honestly, like, if I did not have corporate training, if I didn't have online corporate training, I would be done. Because I could not sustain myself and my venue without being able to do corporate. So the fact that during the second lockdown, so from the autumn until now, organizations who were still figuring out what teleworking is, how to work from home, etc. So they canceled me during the first lockdown because they were like, okay, whenever we go back into in-person teaching, we'll have you back. But then they realized, okay, we're not going to be able to do this for a while. And then they took a gamble and they went into, okay, can you train us online? So they're the reason I'm still standing. I would not be able to be standing and support a school if I only had the school.
Which is a thing that I think a lot of people say, well, if you run an improv theater, then you got to do corporate training so you can pay your performers who are in your live theater, right? Which is true, but also it's not necessarily the dream for me to do corporate training. I've done 20 years of improv with corporations. So the fact that I have to do it, and I enjoy it, they don't, clients don't go away, but but like it's not where my heart gets filled, and it's sad to me that there isn't a way to make the theater itself its own entity, because it's a totally different thing to sell and create corporate trainings. It's another business. So in order to run an improv theater, you have to actually be able to run a theater, a training center, and a corporate business at least.
I think so. Yeah. I honestly, I think that at least my experience has been that you need those three elements in order to make sure that you survive. It shouldn't be like that. You should be able to have a theater that can just sustain itself. But I think that this pandemic has made it very obvious that, the survival of the fittest has meant that, we've got to do everything and we've got to spread ourselves otherwise.
Yeah, that's what Velvet Wells, who joined us last time, was saying. It's the fundamental of capitalism is this survival of the fittest. So, Elise, what were your thoughts?
My thoughts are that, like, we're having this conversation about, like, what could we do after the pandemic, right? But like what we're going to need to do after the pandemic is what we never could have done before. We never could do before the pandemic. And that is have thriving improv theaters that are just thriving because of the art. Like I feel like it's just like the pandemic has done for so many different industries and cultures and whatever. Like, we just have to change completely what we're doing, because otherwise it's going to be down to the same old shit. We're going to go back, it's going to open up again, and it's going to be the same problems all over again. Like, I can't tell you how much improv I've done and not gotten paid for it, because that's just the standard, right? Like, when I moved to Sarasota, the only reason like that I was getting paid for every show, and that I was getting paid and actually like making some kind of living, not really a living wage, but I was making plenty of money that a lot of improvisers don't make just doing improv, is because the theater has money. Not because improv is making the theater all of the money in the world. Yes, our improv department particularly makes a good chunk of money because of the audiences that we have in Sarasota. But Florida Studio Theater makes money, right? Like, it's an equity theater. They have lots of stages. They have tons of subscribers, one of the highest subscribership rates in the US, right? So even if we did a gig that maybe wouldn't pay the theater that much, I still got paid my same rate. And there aren't many Florida Studio Theaters around the country. So ultimately, like, I remember the first time that Will picked me up. It was probably like a week after I got to Sarasota. He picked me up. We went to like a Spanish gig or something like that. And as I'm getting out of the car, I'm like, all right, bye. He's like, all right, I'll send you a 1099. I'm like, for what? He's like, I'm going to pay you. I'm like, you're going to what? He's like, I'm going to pay you. I'm like, you're going to pay me for doing improv? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh shit, great. Let me get out of here before you change your mind, because I don't, it just isn't standard. And when I would tell like my friends from Miami, yeah, I get paid for every show, they're like, what do you mean? Like, it's just not, it's not something that I think we're used to. And I think the problem was already in existence before the pandemic. And now the pandemic just made it more obvious, like Kelly said. So I don't know what the fix
Velvet
is.
was just talking about subscription models, and I've been looking into subscription models as well. I am not on the other end of that research yet, and particularly with some online offerings, it's easier to manage subscriptions. Like, for example, what if we took the whole hierarchy of classes down, and you get a membership, and then you have access to the classes. You take them in order that you pick, and I need to work on my characters, so I can go back and take that one again without paying again. It's just part of my subscription,
right?
And that's something that we're starting to look at how that might change things. I get worried. I think, Joe, you were the one who sort of made me realize, like, that can lead down to kind of this Scientology route, right? Where people are subscribing and then you want to keep them as subscribers, and then you get them to pay more money the deeper that they're in. So it does
bring in other subscribers.
Yeah. So it's a good caution to have, because it does remove something that before we went live that we were talking about, where at Curious, we have a very clear, it is a hierarchy. It is a colonial sort of model. But the benefit of it, keeping in mind all the disadvantages of it, but the benefit of it is you take your levels and you go all the way through, and then you're eligible to be on a conservatory team. And then you can continue to learn. You pay less than you did in class, but now you're learning how to be on a team, and you're still learning. Whereas if it's this subscription model, somebody may have been subscribed for 3 years and they're still not quite ready for our style or our stage, but there's somebody who's been subscribed for 6 months and they accelerate into some curated opportunities. And how do you manage those kinds of situations? Worth asking, because it's a whole other way. And when we have 100 regular performers at Curious on various teams. We have about 100 students, and we have about 3 admins, 2 full-time. Now we have 3, but it's been 2 admins managing all those people. And that's so time consuming. It's the most time consuming thing, is managing human beings, and especially performers who tend to need a lot of attention, and especially in improv, where it's not like, oh, I go to accounting school and I apply for jobs and I get these opportunities. It's so subjective, right? So there's a lot of feelings to manage, expectations to manage. So part of me feels like what I really need to do is look at shrinking the talent pool to those who we can pay. And then those people get a lot of opportunities because it is impossible to pay 30 improvisers for a show that had 20 people there. And we have 3 teams, right? But it breaks my heart a little because all that opportunity, all that community is suddenly gone.
That makes me think of, like, when you said that, the first thing I heard in my brain, bear with me because it's going to take a second. I'm a verbal processor. The first thing that I heard when you said that, I heard board of directors, and what I mean by that is like a rotating board. Like sometimes when you're on the board of directors of a nonprofit, like you have a term, right?
Yes.
So you have a term now as board of director for the next year or two. Then we have to change out the board. So that might be, I feel like that's all that I heard, because it's like, okay, great. If you shrink the talent pool to pay a salary or whatever kind of stipends or whatever you're paying them, then the first, I obviously heard everybody complaining about like, oh, well, how come I didn't get picked and blah, 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 blah. So, but then you can say, all right, we're going to have this term. And after this term, these people are going to be shifted out. And then the next round of people is going to be moved in. Again, I don't know how much that would satisfy all of the issues, right? But I understand that there's a lot of competing.
It's competing priorities because
interests.
Also then you lose longevity, right? You lose continuity of players who've played together for 5 years. Yeah. And I think that's a big misconception also that we've been working against at Curious is like right now at our main stage show is this main ensemble, and people want to get in that right. They're like, I want to get in there. I want to play with the big kids. I want to get in that thing. But then we created,
I feel like that's everywhere in improv, right?
Yeah.
Like we've all felt that before.
But we've added these Thursday shows and these Tuesday shows, and then those people are becoming the big kids because they're playing with each other and they're building each other's confidence and they're familiar with each other and they're serving it up with each other.
Yeah.
And to me, it's much harder to take one of those people and stick them into this group that's already been playing together for 5 years. They get intimidated, they get shy, they don't necessarily play at their best, even if those players are trying to bring them up and highlight them, right? There's a confidence gap. Whereas if you come up together, then maybe you're an ensemble that gets scheduled together instead of this one, right? It's not like this group is individually, they're great players, but they're playing at that level because they played together for so long. Yeah. So, and again, I'm not arguing against it. I'm just trying to weigh what you gain versus what you lose.
Totally.
But that's one of the things that happened at IO historically, when there was always like one woman on each team. And then they break up a team, but let's take this woman and then put her on a different team because we need a woman on that team. But by definition, whenever you add a new person to a team, you change the chemistry of the team. And people gain an improv skill and savvy, but people also gain a familiarity with the chemistry with the team that they're playing with. And I think what most people don't realize that like most improv formats that exist because a group of people played together for 2 or 3 years and then kind of codified what their moves are because that's what they do. And now, boom, JTS Brown's a format. And it's really it's because these people play that way. And if you try to teach other people that, it's just not the same thing. So it's the same thing with, like, I agree with you, that Tuesday group, you give them a few years to, come up and solidify, and then the whole group can move over ideally. But every time you switch parts, you change the chemistry. And there's only one thing I wanted to bring up, just like, especially in Stacey and Kelly meeting, and neither of you has to talk about this, but in empathy for both of you, like amazingly talented, strong women who own your own business. And Kelly and I were just talking the other night. And this is Kelly said to me a thing that you've said to me many times, Stacey, is that you're women who own your own business. You're multi-talented. You're actors, you're writers, you're directors, you're business owners. And this whole idea of like, okay, I own this business and I'm going to change the way we're doing things, not just out of an established model that doesn't work, that is at least something I can get my brain around, but to address all of these issues of equity and opportunity and business and whatever. What Kelly said to me the other day was, I don't want to wake up 10 years later and like, I'm not an artist anymore. I'm just somebody who's trying to make sense of a business. And so, and that's something that you had said to me. So I just wanted to kind of like open that up so the two of you could like talk about that if you'd like to.
Sure. I just want to clarify. I didn't call you and say, I'm just this multi-talented woman.
No, I'm saying that because neither one of you would say that.
Words. These are your words.
Yeah, these are my words.
If you did, that'd be perfectly motherfucking fine.
You know, I'm going to take a little tangent because in my corporate work, we talk about status in storytelling. And I used to always do this thing. I don't know. I did it impulsively one time because we were with a car brand, and they were very status, the most status motivated people that we had ever worked with, and very difficult to rein in. And so I started telling a story about how I started doing improv in Portland, and then I moved to Chicago, and how quickly I realized I was better than most people in Chicago. And then I started teaching, and students were trying to copy me, and I would pull them aside and I would say, you got to find your own way, the way that I did. And I was just brag. And then I'd stop and I would always shake when I was doing it because I'm so uncomfortable, like talking like that. And I would stop and I would say, how many people are uncomfortable right now? And, you know, people would shift and raise their hands. And I would be like, what did it make you think of? Like, prove it. She better have a point. I could be doing something else right now. And it was an illustration that when we're advertising, we're taking up people's time to brag about ourselves. And they do the same thing that they were doing when I was bragging, which is, you know, wonder what the hell I'm doing. But Elise, I did a bunch of projects in Mexico, and the Mexican clients fucking loved it. They did not care at all. That they would always be like, good for you. Like, like culturally, it was okay to talk yourself up. But like in New York, when I worked for a brand, I had somebody actually like scoff out loud and walk out of the room because he couldn't handle me taking that much status for that.
It's the inherent self-worth, and I'm that's not something that I just came up with. We just had a rapper on John and I's podcast, and he had a whole thing where he talked about how people are uncomfortable with inherent self-worth. Well, he specifically said white people are uncomfortable with inherent self-worth.
Yes.
So that you're describing, it's so funny to me that you're like, I went to Mexico and they're like, hell yeah. And that's what I just thought right now. I was like, so what? Let her say that. It's true. Isn't she? Is not, did she lie? Right? That's.
But back to what Joe was saying. Yes, for sure. Kelly, do you want to speak to it? What Joe was just saying?
Sure. Yeah, I was asking Joe's advice because when you're a leader in your community, you will get you'll get questioned, you'll get scrutinized. I think as a woman, maybe even more. Probably subconsciously, not even consciously.
Projected upon.
Yeah. And I'm starting to cast students for our professional shows. Yes, and I thought that everyone would see that as a fantastic opportunity. Look at what you can achieve. You can be on a main stage show, but then the conversation about why him or why her and not me start. And how did Kelly come to this conclusion? Never mind that it's not just me. Like I have artistic directors. It's not just me. But this idea of questioning of who is getting cast and why, and this idea that it, do you have to be friends? Where's the transparency? It surprised me because I feel like I've done a lot for the community in Brussels. There's a theater that just operated, like it's a theater that's been erected and only hosts improvised shows, that until last year didn't have other Anglophone shows that weren't Impro-Bubble shows, and didn't have Dutch speaking shows. So I paved the way for those shows to get a platform. And I've always been fighting for more people to have a platform in improv. So the fact that people were then, saying, oh, well, you've got to be friends with her in order to get a part, really jarred with me, because that was not at all my intention. But unfortunately, like something that Dave Morris and I were talking about today, people need to distinguish between leaders in the community and leaders of the community. I am a leader in my community. I am not the leader of my community. And if you want to do a show or you want to make something happen, I'm not the Holy Grail. Like, make it happen. Don't wait for me to invite you. I'm not in your brain. I don't know, who is out there. Like, there's probably a lot of people with a lot of great ideas.
Sorry, just because that's such an important point. And this is why my heart breaks at the idea that we will be losing so many theaters. So Portland has had 9 brick and mortar improv theaters at its peak, and that's crazy. I don't know any city that has that many per capita. However, the benefit of that is that no one person's casting is deciding whether someone gets to be active in the community or not, right? I'm just one of many, and as an artistic director, right, our job, and this applies to you, Kelly, is to decide the style and the shape and the mood and the look, and somebody just may not be my particular cup of tea. And so they can find other places that value the way that they're playing. If somebody, like from comedy sports, which is bigger and broader, right, and louder and faster, on one extreme, on the other side of us, to a theater that does dramatic improv and slice of life scenes, which I enjoy both of those things. I love dynamic improv. I love people who can do one or the other. If you are a fast and funny player who doesn't like poignant moments, you're probably not going to thrive at my theater. If you're someone who loves poignant moments but never gets silly, you're probably not going to thrive at my theater, while I am the artistic director there, right? It is a matter of taste. That is the artistic director's job, is to establish the style of that theater. Chris Griswold was just saying that, like, people take auditions and casting personally because they can't see the whole process, or how many aspects have nothing to do with them.
That goes outside of improv as well. That's with straight acting too.
Absolutely. Like, everybody should try casting a show. Everyone should try producing a show. Like, I try really hard to be like so good on if someone else is driving. I try to be like everything I dream of. I was doing stand-up at the stand-up club in town, and I would like help clean up the tape. People would be like, will you stop, Stacey? I'm like, you're all working so hard. It was so slammed. Like, I just know what it takes. So I feel like that casting.
Sorry, guys.
I felt like I had to show even more, though.
I'll be right back.
Yeah. But because I run my own theater too, and we do stand up there as well, I also felt extra pressure to show that I appreciate this venue, and I wasn't walking in like I got my own thing. I recognize what it takes to run a place. So I
think what you just said. Sorry, go ahead.
No,
Joe.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, like, one thing we're facing in the future is this mix of there's a right for a sense of some entitlement to exist, and at the same time, a sense of entitlement. If you take a sense of entitlement with you onto the stage, you're going to fail at improvisation.
Sure.
Like to walk on stage is a privilege, regardless of who you are, or you can look at it like a privilege because we are in a service industry. And if it is my privilege to serve you, in my opinion, regardless of who you are, then I am set up to take care of you, to take care of me, to take care of the show, to take care of the theater. And there should be opportunities for everyone to have that same privilege.
Yeah.
So we're just humans, and how do we balance that? And the reason I wanted to connect you and Kelly on this one is, it is for me to fanboy both of you, and it is for me to say how awesome you both are. And when people come after both of you, like, there is a complete blindness to an empathy they should have to how freaking hard it is just to do what you're doing to run a freaking theater. But you're also artists who are not getting the opportunity to do what these people want to do, that you're providing them the opportunity to do. You're sacrificing that opportunity for yourself to run a clubhouse that by definition is going to be imperfect and can only try to evolve.
That's what John Tim says all the time, and he was just speaking to it in these comments, that if you want to get paid, right? And so I understand the equity issues, and I am working toward paying, right? So I just want to make that part clear.
Yeah.
I don't need to be convinced that paying people is going to be essential to creating an equitable space, right? How we do that, how much we do. I want to say, like, a lot of people brag about paying their performers, and they pay them maybe $10 for a show. And for me, that doesn't solve the problem. First of all, in Oregon, we can't, if we're paying, we have to pay fair wages. So in a way, we are trapped at Curious in terms of, like, we either pay nothing or we pay a lot. However, I appreciate it because it's those laws are designed to protect labor. So we can't pay $10 unless somebody's working for 15 minutes. Like, we have the highest minimum wage. Our minimum wage is $15 an hour. We have to consider our performers employees. So I have to pay my share of their taxes. I have to pay workers' comp. So if I have 100 performers,
you can't hire them as contractors?
No. And this is something that I can try and am investigating, but because Oregon is one of 2 states with the most strict laws around employees versus contractors. So even though all of our performers have some kind of income outside of Curious, even if they make $90,000 a year, and then they make maybe $1,000 at Curious from doing a show a month, they're an employee. We tell them where to be. We tell them when to be there. We have a dress code. We give them notes. So to be an independent contractor, you have to work on your own time in your own space, which doesn't make sense to me because you still have to show up to a meeting sometimes, but that's the way the law is here. So not only do I have to figure out how to pay, I have to pay employees. I'm going to look into stand-ups I can pay as contractors. And here we wrap back around. A stand-up I can pay as a contractor because they generally have a website and a Facebook page, and they are soliciting work outside of Curious.
I see. So they're almost a business. They're basically a business. So that's why you can pay them as contractors.
Correct. But improvisers tend to pick a home. They perform there a couple times a month. They don't create their own website. They don't seek other opportunities. We even encourage, people to perform at multiple improv theaters in town. You have to really actively encourage that, or people feel like they're betraying you. And so it's a homey hobby. And so when the loss that I feel in terms of thinking about paying is that there are no politics around getting paid or not getting paid right now. There are there's no one there doing it just to get paid. The thing I love about Portland is that it's an arts-centric city where people aren't moving to New York or LA or Chicago to get famous. People here are having jobs, they're having babies, and they're doing improv because they love it. And some people even actively don't want to get paid. And again, I understand the equity issues and working with it, but I will be sad to have the mood change to one of seeking money or or fame, you know, like when a bunch of stand-ups in Portland, Ian Carmel, Ron Funches, like appeared on TV, the whole stand-up community transformed into very intensely looking for fame, right? And through Portland, which is like weird. It's like here, people want to be part of the community. They want to contribute to the community. They understand that, you know, I make half of what I made when I was in marketing and about what I made when I was an administrative assistant when I was 30 years old. I don't have benefits. I don't have health benefits. You know, I give everybody, I'm pretty generous with time off because that's something that we can share. And it isn't a story of me being a victim. I don't want it to come across that way because I've made this choice and made this choice because I love this life. The only time it becomes a problem is when I feel like people accuse me of being the man or being corporate or of being selfish. And then that's the moments I want to quit. Because the only real reward I'm getting out of this is creating a beautiful, healthy, wonderful community of artists who find joy playing with each other and for our audiences. I don't run theaters like the two of you boss ass queens do. But I also hear, just as a woman, I hear that, like, I don't think a lot of the feelings that you're having would be shared by men because we're so used to carrying responsibility for everyone and taking responsibility for other people's actions in rooms that it's even heavier of a burden just for someone who is a woman, right? Who is, whether you are identify as a woman, whether you were born, assigned as a woman at birth, like, you know, it's just something that we do in every room anyway. So it's even heavier when you're running something where you're having to deal with other humans and feeling like you have to carry all of their everything. Literally everything.
I think the expectations are always going to be doubly there for us.
Yeah. And like coming to somebody's show, right, is it feels like a mom request to me when I'm super busy and I'm filling out grants for 12 hours and like I mean, no joke, John brings me food. I eat it at my desk and he takes the dishes away, you know, especially during the pandemic. Like I've been just working nonstop trying to make it work. And so like I do feel bad disappointing somebody who wanted me to be there to support them. Like I'm like going to cry right now to disappoint someone, but then to feel like I've disappointed someone because I'm so busy trying to keep the place alive is really painful, like genuinely. And not just because I'm a woman, I also like love everybody. Like it's the whole reason why I'm doing it.
But it's very lonely. It's lonely because it's hard. It feels like no one's going to understand at that point.
Yeah,
and everyone's against it.
It is.
Something that Kelly said earlier was culture. Like you said, culture, and it's just kind of stuck with me. When you were saying that the government is not investing in culture, it was just booze and hair, or booze and vanity.
I love the spark notes on that. That's amazing.
Yeah, the spark notes on that are that the government invests in booze and vanity, which I'm not opposed to, but I would like a more whole approach.
Cheers.
I would appreciate a more whole approach. I feel like culture is the thing that, in terms of like things that, you know, how I was saying earlier, that things that weren't working before the pandemic are now just being highlighted and kind of a magnifying glass is being put upon it. But I think culture, we could use culture within the community as well, right? Culture in terms of like understanding what it takes to run this. UPS, hard at work. Understanding what it takes to run a theater, understanding what each other's experiences in the community is. So women, BIPOC, LGBTQIA, you know, understanding culture from within, the complete culture, right, from within, I think is going to be a big deal in terms of moving forward when we come back from the pandemic, right? Like understanding what is improv culture beyond yes ands, like the entire picture of how all of this works, because that I think is what is going to carry us into the change.
Yeah. Sorry, just to jump on what you're saying, Elise, I also don't use improv against improv. I don't know if this has happened to you, but you're supposed to say yes to everything. Like, why are you excluding me? Like, when my request is something like show up to class, and if you're not going to show up to class, then maybe come when you can make class. But I feel like improv, because of its nature of openness and because of its community feeling, sometimes we get the arguments of improv used against us when we're producers or organizers or directors. Like, I thought this was supposed to be a supportive community. Why aren't you letting me do whatever I want? And I mean, that's the subtext of what they're saying.
I had a mentor who put it this way that has rung through my brain so many times, is that what we love about improvisers is the power of yes and, right? So we decided very late in the game we wanted our fundraiser to be this 25-hour event with 250 improvisers, and we put it together in a heartbeat, and it never would have worked if improvisers weren't just like showing up and saying yes and being willing to do it, and it was like a beautiful, magical, wonderful thing. But he also said on the flip side, like, you might have improvisers in the green room and they're hanging out and somebody goes like, oh, check out that space heater. It's funky. It's cool. It looks like it's like from the 50s. And somebody else looks at it and they go, yes, it does look like it's from the 50s. Wow, that thing's probably really old. And then somebody else says, yeah, it's probably a fire hazard. And then someone else says, yeah, doesn't anyone care about us? They're putting us in here in a fire trap.
In a virtual fire trap.
And it's like someone brought this in from their house and donated it to the green room because someone said they're cold. And all of a sudden the improvisers are all ready to be burned down by the management, right? So I always thought that was a really good example of the power of yes and for both good and for evil. Or not for evil, but just for intensity of every situation.
Or willful misrepresentation.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think boundaries are important, and I'm getting better also at setting boundaries for myself, because
Which should be, again, a standard part of the culture.
It should be,
and
for
it just
sure.
hasn't been.
No, and like, I think, I feel, and I hope it's true, but I feel that Curious has, is light years ahead of places that I came up in improv because as a woman, and a lot, we have mainly women on the board and mainly women who are administrators. And so, for example, when a taller, bigger woman was in the green room and somebody made a fat joke and that performer said, I don't like that, and other people looked at them like they were being a party pooper, I would encourage that, right? Like, she didn't say, you're an asshole. She said, I don't like that. I don't like fat shaming. I don't think that's appropriate, right? Like, and the culture in Chicago, right, Joe, is if I ever spoke up about anything like that, you're off the list. You're a bummer. You're crazy, or you're hard to work with, or you're difficult, right? So the culture has to support boundary setting and discussions about those things. And like, this person's an amazing performer, an amazing friend, an amazing human. You're going to write this person off because you want to fat shame? Like, it just seems like a terrible trade-off.
Yeah,
right?
It's inclusion in all sorts of forms.
Yep. But it's hard to set. I think for me, the hardest thing has been like trying to be a big person sometimes ends up feeling like a doormat.
Yeah, I relate to that so much. It's so hard to choose your battles and to choose what is worth your time to respond to and what is better left, because you know that you can set them straight, but that will just get you down this vicious circle where you'll never end up anywhere. Because if someone does not agree with you, then they're not going to agree with you. And it's a shame. It's a shame because I think it's hard to be in the position that we are in. Like, it's a hard position to be in from the outset. So when people don't think you have their best interests at heart, you're already on the losing side, because they think that, oh, well, she doesn't want me there, or nah. And so you're always going to be playing on defense. Mm-hmm. And no matter what you say, you're not going to be able to make a dent. And so then it's a decision on your side to knowingly let something slide, even though it's untrue, incorrect, whatever, in order to be able to pick your battles and gather your resources, especially now when everything the world we're living in has made everything so if I need to pick this, because if I don't pick this, then that is gonna fall, and so you're needing to divide your time and your energy in a way that you never had to before. And so even though you disagree with things and you'd like to set people straight, you've got to let it go. You have no choice, because you're looking at the big picture right now.
I'm going to need an example here. I'm going to need, because I think I hear what you all are saying, but I think we need to be clear about the spectrum.
Yeah, because
here.
I want you all to know that what we're talking about are pretty amazing requests and senses of, we're not talking about a little sense of entitlement. We're talking about some massive entitlement. And just to speak to what Kelly was saying, I think did I bring up the nuns last time we talked? I did consulting for nuns who ran a hospital network.
Amazing.
It was awesome. I think about them all the time. I have to admit, wasn't really was born into an Orthodox Christian family, but I was the fourth kid, so no one was taking us to church. My entire
y'all will figure it out. I can't even pretend.
I'm Syrian, so it's very similar to Greek Orthodox.
Okay, cool. Amazing.
And my entire education was Jesus Christ Superstar in terms of Christianity. But what I loved from these nuns, so they started in Ireland, and this nun was born Irish and adopted by Protestant parents. So she was very rich. And then her parents died. And so then she used her wealth to create a school and hospital and domestic abuse shelter in her giant home for the Irish, who were very oppressed in Ireland at the time, or for the Catholics. Sorry, I'm trying to say Catholics. So, and she worked with the priest of the Catholic Church, but then he died. And then the new guy was like, you're trying to be a church, and so you need to become a nun. And so she agreed to become a nun, but only because she was competing with the church. So she needed to give herself to the church, which she agreed, but only if she could be what's called a walking nun, which was coined kind of around her legacy, which was that she didn't want to be cloistered with the nuns. She wanted to be out in the community. And so she started this whole thing that's now worldwide. She's hilarious. All the nuns were hilarious. She believed in laughter and love, and you always give everyone a comfortable cup of tea, which means whiskey in it. And she would say things like, when I come to town, we're going to lock all the stiffs up in the church and have a good time. She's a massive character. So their values are the same values as Curious now. I have borrowed their values. And one is justice. And what justice means in this church is about this exact thing. It's about how much do you give one individual at the cost of the whole organization. And when you're in a nonprofit environment, as we are, arts environment, your compassion can let you give one person so much that you allow that person to disrupt the entire organization. And so their interpretation of justice was being willing to have hard conversations with individuals and make hard decisions that feel not as compassionate to the individual that are compassionate to everyone else. So I'll give you an example. In a hospital.
So that's exactly beautifully put, exactly what I was thinking in my mind. Like, I was like, I wanted to make sure that we're clear about this aspect of it.
So if you have a nun you're a nurse, right, who's not coming to work and not pulling their weight, you can be as compassionate as you can be, but you're not being compassionate to everyone else who's making up for that person. Now, if that person's just like losing, dealing with a sick spouse or sick child, you may actually endure that person's performance suffering, and everyone may be willing to help sustain that person through that period of time. And I think that's a beautiful community that's willing to do that. But if that person's just chronically doing that and believes that they're entitled to do that, then it's up to even a compassionate person to say, this is not fair to everyone else.
I've met very few nuns in my life, and the ones that I have met have been incredible, just like what you're describing. But the thing that I have always looked up to the most has been the discipline aspect of it. Like, we are going to make this choice to pursue the justice of whatever it is that we're presented with, and we're going to stick with that, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
I just want to say right on point before you continue, I got the scales of justice right after law school, and there's a reason why it's on that finger. Amazing. Please continue.
And I think I just to do a kind of general example in the improv environment, there is something that happens with volunteerism often where there might be something that the theater could benefit from. And so I'll just use a case that hasn't actually been an issue at Curious, but like our windows could use some marketing materials, and we could probably put, it would probably help a lot for us to invest the time and money into getting that designed and put up and paying the money. Just haven't had the time to find a graphic designer who understands it, and I've made like half attempts. But sometimes a volunteer will be like, that's the most important thing. I can't believe that's not getting done. That should be a priority. And then you're like, I can't handle it. It's just not on my plate. I've got to, keep our staff from getting laid off forever. And so the person says, I'll do it, which is awesome, right? On one hand, it's awesome. However, trying to do that does still involve my input in terms of budget, in terms of look, in terms of style, in terms of a lot of things. So sometimes that volunteerism is actually pushing someone else's priority higher on my priority list. And then when I can't give them the things they need to do this thing they're volunteering to do, which is an incredible gift and such an awesome thing that I don't want to kill that enthusiasm. I don't want to kill that energy and that desire and that passion, but I'm like, I just don't have the time for this item. And so then they start to feel discouraged, and then they feel hurt and like they weren't supported, and then something that started as a wonderful idea and gift to the theater ends up being a frustrating experience for them. Does that make sense? Is that vague enough?
Yeah.
But specific enough?
No, it makes sense. It's specific enough, I think.
Yes, Mithra is asking, are we talking about entitlement? We are touching on entitlement a bit here today.
Well, when we were having a conversation before we went live, we were talking a little more specifically, and the first thing that came to mind was entitlement. It was entitlement for sure.
And I'm not
even
talking
the volunteering thing, by the way. The volunteering thing, it's like, oh, you're not going to do it. Yeah, I'll do it. It's just another way of pushing, especially if it's, again, appreciating the volunteerism. I love how it's an ism now. The volunteerism is great, but it's ultimately we're going to find out what really your motive was, which was really just to get again, like you said, your priority pushed to the top, which is entitlement.
Mm-hmm. Right. And also it's coming from a naive place as well of not understanding how many considerations there are in every decision. Right. So, the classic example is I had somebody wanted to build the wall that separates the bar from the rest of the space. The wall is awesome. There was no denying that wall was a great thing to have. But I was like, do not have the energy for this wall. So Bert's like, I could do it for $500-$600. I'll take care of it. It won't be on your plate. I'm like, there's just no way this isn't going to end back, and like fight. Finally, I'm like, yes, okay, this wall's a great idea. $500, not going to be on my plate. Great, let's do this. So the wall starts going in. Then it's not done by the time the shows happen. So then we have to figure out how to have these like big sticks with the plastic like over the audience, like while we have to still do our shows. And ultimately, the wall cut off the air circulation that was from the ceiling fans to the kitchen. And so all of a sudden, the bar staff is flop sweating, just 100% soaking through their clothes. And so we had to install a $7,500 vent from the bar up through the ceiling to add air. And so this is what I mean. I'm not trying to be shitty when I'm like, there's a lot to think about. It's really hard to make any one decision that doesn't ripple through to affecting other people. And again, great idea. Love the wall. Glad we have it. Thank God we had $7,500 at that time, right? Like there are times where I would have just like lost my bar staff because I would not have had $7,500 to spend. Like with the pandemic, I really had to grieve that we were at the best place we've ever been. And I thought I was going to get to enjoy being an artist this year. In 2020.
Oh, Stacey. So naive of you. You thought you would get to enjoy something?
I was like, we were ahead, right? We weren't even we were like 3 to 6 months ahead. We were all cranking. Our team had been together for 2 years. Everyone was trained up. Everyone knew, like the risk was that they were getting bored, right? It was an amazing moment. And so I had to grieve that. But thank God we were at the best point, because that's what we're surviving on now is the money we made in the first quarter of last year. So anyway, I know I just kind of hopped all around, but entitlement is relevant to what the landscape is going to look like on the other end, because entitlement is another thing that's driving small theater managers and owners out, because it's the main cause of burnout, if you ask me, in my personal experience, managing burnout. And everyone, luckily we got the second space last year, 2 years ago now, and it's been an opportunity for people to produce their own work. And the feedback from people has been amazing, because they were like, oh, when I produced this show, the show itself was this much and the work was this much. And I'm like, yes. I just want everyone to understand what it takes realistically. That's all.
When Patty Stiles was in town in Sarasota, she did an exercise which I had not done before in this way, and I always remembered it after she did this, but she had even the most inexperienced improvisers direct a scene, right, with her care, right, like not just be like, all right, you take care of these people, I'll be right back. So she kind of helped someone direct a scene. And
what's Foxy
my
doing?
dad is
Okay.
No,
it's
it's my dad. Now he's like, oh, it's time to cook. It's like, no, it's not. Welcome to Miami.
I love your dad.
Welcome to Miami.
So she did this, and I immediately, there's plenty of improvisers that I've seen in my time, especially in Sarasota, that have a sense of entitlement, right? You hit Improv 101, I'm entitled. So when Joe's been here. Joe's been in Sarasota, so it's like, you know what it is. So when she came in and she had these people, like she had everybody direct a scene. I've never seen people gobble down humble pie like I saw in that moment. Right.
Oh,
and I think what you're
Patty.
saying is important. And in terms of like, again, what Kelly was saying, like, I'm just so stuck on this culture thing. Like if we make part of our, for example, curriculums, you're going to, like you were saying earlier too, Stacey, you're going to produce a show, or you're going to shadow somebody who's producing a show. Mm-hmm. You're going to, like, you don't get to even be on anything until you shadow someone who's producing this. When I was at Just the Funny, like part of, before even getting into a show, I had to do tech for shows, which was much more terrifying than performing in anything.
For sure. Which is
don't
most
have a
people don't
musician there.
know, right? You can't
Yeah,
make a mistake
yeah.
that isn't the most visible thing when you're doing tech.
Exactly. So, and I think that that's one of the most valuable things that I took from that was like, and also from this Patty thing and from all the things that we're talking about, like the culture needs to be enriched in the sense of like, we need to understand how it all works from top to bottom in order for the entitlement to subside. And when it doesn't subside, then we all know that part of the culture is
Right. Right.
right.
You're so right. That's actually a great idea that I think we were hinting around, but you're articulating in like incorporating it in a very real, concrete way, which is what happens in theater. When you go to college for theater, you're supposed to spend time in the costume shop, and you're supposed to spend time in the tech booth, and you're supposed to stage manage, and you're supposed to have every job, because even if it's the job you don't want to do, you can look at your teammate, which is what they are, and you can say, oh gosh, I don't want to do that job, so thank you.
You think I ever talk back to a stage manager in my life? No.
You know, on the Fringe circuit, there's a solo performer who hated techs, and he would always walk into the tech. You get one tech, and the tech is the venue tech, and they're having to tech 10 shows, right? So he would walk in, and this is his story. You know, he would walk in, and he just always felt like they were against him. He was always shitty to them. He felt like you had to really talk to them tough to get them to give what they want because they're lazy and they're whatever. And he's very successful as a performer and always had this tension. So he finally could afford a stage manager. And he hired the stage manager, and he started going to a show and watching how the stage manager talked to the tech and the rapport that the stage manager would have for the tech, and that it would unlock this. Because you know what techs want? They just want to make you freaking happy. They want it to be the best show. They don't even need credit. They don't want to be visible, but they're also like dependable. I think of them as when you think of Avatar: The Last Airbender, they're earthbenders. They're dependable, but they're a little curmudgeon-y, right? They're going to show up, and they're going to show up, and they're going to show up, but they're not as flexible as like performers are in air, right? And these guys are like, I show up, I'm on time, I make sure everything works, right? And so you have to appreciate.
And we need them to be this way.
Exactly. That's what makes them great techs. Like, I'm glad when I see a tech that's an old curmudgeon, like, I'm like, yeah. Or a young woman curmudgeon, right? Like, but it's there. Where
or a
like,
stage manager that's doing this.
Yes. So I think that's a fascinating.
You know, as a stage manager.
That's a fascinating thing to build that in as part of the curriculum and the experience is spending some time to really learn how to produce, how to cast, you know, attend some auditions. And, you know, Chris Griswold was saying, you know, how personal it is because they don't understand. It's like, if you've ever been at a casting, you'll realize like if it's 5 minutes before lunch, sometimes the most brilliant person could come and go and no one's going to notice because they're grumpy. You know, so it's like, that's really brilliant. And the reason why I'm doing these, and we've been talking a long time, so I will wrap it up, but I just feel like these conversations need to be had. We all need to start to understand everybody's position if we want some independent theaters to survive. We all have to participate in understanding what the obstacles are to creating the most equitable space, and how can we all participate in making these changes, because it's really hard to do it by yourself. And that's why it's great to meet Kelly, and like I have this whole list of friends who run theaters in other cities, but we're always so busy running our theaters, it's hard for us to make the time to consult with each other and vent to each other and comfort each other and cheer on each other, which is a silver lining of the pandemic is that it has given us some more time to connect. And Joe, thank you, Joe, for connecting us.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure.
Thank
Can I make one more connection pitch before we're out?
Yeah.
Tomorrow, I don't know if you saw this or not, but our friend Stephanie Ray is going to be talking with John Carr.
Yes, I saw that.
In the afternoon through the Edinburgh International Improv Festival. And so this will be the first time that John's really kind of speaking, I mean, I'm super curious and I love both of them. They're both of them. But it will be like, that's something that people should pay attention and tune into, because those are two powerful up and coming people. Stephanie's the director of the Black Improv Alliance, and she's a dynamic, amazing personality. And John is like as well, but the burden that he's kind of walking into, I've texted back and forth, like he's doing well, but he's kind of got to be close to the vest about what's going on. So I just want to pitch, everybody, not just to support, but just to also inform. I think it's a good opportunity for people to get just a little taste of what's going on.
Definitely.
So that's tomorrow, and I think, what time is it? 1:45 Central, 11:45 Pacific.
What's that for Europe?
That's in Central Europe. It is 8:45 at night. 8:45 to 9:45 p.m.
Great. And we go to the Edinburgh Improv Festival page?
Yeah, it's on. I can send you the link. I think it's on Facebook.
I saw Stephanie post about it.
Great. Oh, yeah, I'll share it as well. Yeah, I'll
Stephanie
share it
Ray,
too.
RAE. But yeah, so and just especially based on our conversations last week. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I really feel like Dads and Huge have made a lot of progress that we can learn from, and he's obviously carrying that into Second City. So I would love to. I'm definitely going to listen to that.
And I would say, that thing I said before about it taking 2 years for a group to gel and find their voice and find their chemistry and who they are, in a way, post-pandemic, because even in different cities, it's the same and it's different. So what I'm curious about is, what's the 2-year process coming out of this going to be, where a more inclusive dynamic and an invitation for more inclusivity, more dynamic personalities, genders, races, all the things. How can the atmosphere be created where for 2 years a different type of potion can be brewing, so that at the end of that time, there's a new culture has been created? And I don't know if that's the answer, but that's where my curiosity is.
Well, when we first made teams, we tried to do the Breakfast Club style, and we wanted all different mixes of people, and it was really hard. And I don't think people's heads were there yet. And we were like, I guess we should have done the Harry Potter like sorting hat and put like people with like people, because it's easier. But now I think, like, we called out people before the pandemic about ageism, which was still sort of lingering, and people immediately reached out to older improvisers and started doing shows with them. And like, so as long as that attitude of like, I understand that getting along with people who aren't exactly like me takes some work and some effort. I need to learn my boundaries and their boundaries, and we have to find where those meet comfortably. Before we go, I'm gonna end this on one story that I tell a lot, which is, and I think my new Greek friend will appreciate this, but actually so will you, Elise, because I feel like it's the same with Latinx culture. So in college, I took a class on Native American culture, and the Native American personal bubble at that time, according to this professor, was about 10 feet. 10-foot personal bubble. So it could have an intimate conversation, but be 10 feet away from each other, which is massive. But when you think about the expanses of, the Western United States at that time, right, there was the space to have this space. And I am Syrian, and the professor said, which is diametrically opposed to Arabs who always stand close enough to smell each other. Which made me laugh so hard, because my family is all close talkers. They're always just like in your face. And I'm like, how are you, honey? Right? Like, just everybody constantly in each other's spaces. And so I have a very small to no personal bubble. But if you do an exercise, like it's like the one that you do, Joe, where you write down like the number of feet apart. Like if you take a person who doesn't know anything about the other person except like their personal bubble is 10 feet, and then you put them in a room with someone like me who has then you end up immediately with tension right from the get-go. And this person's like, why won't this person leave me the fuck alone? And this person's like, why
opposing
doesn't this
magnets,
person like me? Right? And
Yeah.
you have tension immediately. And so it takes time and effort to go, oh, okay. And what's the compromise? Do you learn to let me get close? Do I learn to always stay apart? Do we sometimes touch? Do we stay at 4 feet? Like, I don't know that answer yet. And it's going to depend on who those two people are. But yeah, it's got to take time and effort, and people being self-aware and respectful of other people.
And it can be, if we let it be, it can be a tender process.
That's at my
If we let it be that.
my
right?
best friend Sarah was like not a hugger, and I would go in for hugs, you know, because we were young too. So like at that time, I didn't really have any self-awareness about my lack of boundaries. But she would always be like, "Oh, are we okay? Are we doing this now?" Oh, and like her ears would go up. She's like, "Oh, okay." But she wanted, like, she was open to it and wanted
Sure.
to become a hugger, and now she's totally a hugger. And so it's a really beautiful part of our friendship. And I love thinking about her being like, "Okay," and like she knew she wasn't comfortable, but she knew she would get more comfortable over time.
Yeah.
So
I'll paraphrase my therapist by saying, like, close relationships come from enjoying discomfort together.
yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right. We'll leave
Thanks,
it.
therapist.
Always
at
good
that.
with therapists.
Yes, therapists. We all got good therapists to refer to. But thank you so
Shout out
much.
Pamela.
Yeah, I can't believe we talked for like an hour and a half, which I didn't. It was not my intention, but it was so easy. So Kelly and Elise and Joe, I'm sure I'll be talking to you both all the time now. And thanks everybody for watching. We'll do some more of
Thank
these.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.